It sends you completely into an LSD-like thing. I can't remember what that was. It was at some friends of mine had a party, and the woman who was doing the cooking, she's really into all these natural South African plants, and she had it out there, and it's really tasty. And I just kept going for it. And they told me, Curtis, you probably want to lay back a little bit on that one. So yeah, I mean, I got a buzz off it. This is common, right? You got to be careful because you get into the wrong plant and it'll kill you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Season 2 of the Liberal Gun Owner's Lens podcast. I am Miyanovich, and I will be your pilot on an unprecedented ride through the most innovative and forward-thinking analysis of the relationship between humans and guns on planet Earth. The entire nexus between guns and public safety needs a wake-up call, and Liberal Gun Owners is here to rock that party. Are you somebody who thinks you know what's going on with guns and public safety? I don't give a shit. I'm dragging your ass into the future whether you like it or not. And originally you had said the complexity of the coastal foraging niche that pushes the brain. We're eating new fats, essential fatty acids. The brain's becoming a better thing. And that's one of the key features that pushes humans into this new place. You also had said, and this is in the previous podcast, that as an aside, you say it also could have been projectiles. But do you think it matters? Like, it's probably both. One does more, the other does a little bit. Does it really matter? Like, I guess is my question.
I think that to get the kind of evolution of the psychology and cognition of modern humans, I think you have to create a complex social environment. Mm-hmm. I think that's crucial. I think that the evolution of projectile weaponry is probably more a byproduct of that than a driver of it. Though I think that once projectile weaponry gets into the system as a component of intergroup warfare, it can have a positive feedback effect.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that once we evolve a modern human, and by modern human I mean an anatomical Homo sapiens that also has the cognitive and psychological machinery that we have. Once you have that, I don't think there's a lot of change in it over time. And I think that happens probably 110, 120,000 years ago in Africa. And so I don't think there's a lot of tweaking of that happens afterwards.
Okay. And so what I notice is, as somebody who's looking at weapons all the time, right? And obviously I'm going to just be weapons. Like I have a little bit, probably too much of a bias for it. But when I look at the ancient human toolkit, or the tools that we created during the time where we were viable in terms of evolution, right? During the evolutionary window, there's scrapers, cutters, projectiles. Like there's a handful of tools, things. If I look at the world now and all of the weapons distributions maps that I have to look at, and all of the countries of the world and all of the peoples of the world, like we are awash in weaponry, not just firearms, but it is everywhere. Everywhere you go where there's a significant population center, 2,000 or above, you're surrounded by weapons, knives, bow and arrow, firearms, everywhere. Now, the same thing can be said about hammers, scraper thingies, right? But hammers and scraper thingies don't spin the world as much as projectiles do. Like, they really are a thing that we really use, and we really, in one way or another, see as a necessity to do things. So that's when I look at the ancient toolkit and I see how it's transpired, moved from then until now. Where projectiles go is like ape shit. And then everything else, yeah, we do hammers. Yeah, we do the scrapey thingy. But boy, do we really still do it. So what are your thoughts about that? And you probably mentioned these ideas previously, but do you have thoughts about that? Like the projectiles are just everywhere and we really, really, really are into them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we get into this. It's easy to get into the speculative phase, right, of discussion with stuff like this. But, if you follow this Russian-Ukrainian conflict, everything depends upon distance and accuracy, right? The Ukrainians are constantly wanting the stuff that the United States has developed that has the greater distance, the greater accuracy. And that's really the game. Plus, volume, having enough of it. That really is a driver of technology, right? The military industrial complex is constantly trying to figure out how to throw things further and faster and more accurate, rail guns and so on, hypersonic missiles. And there's no doubt that drives technological advance in all kinds of systems, software, propellants, everything. You know what I'm saying? So it has a feedback relationship into everything we end up doing. That's unfortunate, I think, because it means that weaponization or warfare drives technological advance. I've always said to people, I mean, we probably don't want to be visited by aliens because if they can make it here, they're probably pretty warlike.
Right.
Because it must have been conflict that drove their technologies forward. So yeah, I think it's a big part of the game. Whether or not there's kind of a psychology for projectile weaponry, I think is debatable. But if humans seem to have a love of being able to throw things and hit things, and they get a boost of pleasure when they hit the bullseye, and it just seems like there's an evolved psychology around it, and I think that's probably likely. I don't know if there's a psychological literature on it.
I'm actually looking at it right now, and there's nothing there, but I'm actually developing two hypotheses, which later on I will talk to you, probably next year I'll talk to you about it. Yeah. There's enough there to speculate. I think maturely and reasonably that there's a deeply emotional genetic thing there. Right. Low fidelity, because otherwise we would just be like killing each other constantly. Very low fidelity, but something translated, I believe. But that's something that we could talk about later.
It should be that. It should, with today's technology, it shouldn't be very hard to study. I mean, people can measure oxytocin levels, and you can use fMRI to see where the brain is firing and measure, are people getting doses of pleasure when they hit bullseyes versus not. I'm sure you could study this. You would need, you'd need the pros to put it together and work on
money.
But I'm surprised that someone hasn't studied it. Yeah. But I've always noticed it, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, an enormous amount of evolution has gone into the ability to throw a baseball 85 miles per hour into a zone that big. That's an enormous amount of natural selection and costly. So it probably had that. It seems to me reasonable that has an emotional complex locked up in it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll let you know, I in advance, I'm calling it right now special emotional reverence. That there's a special emotional reverence that is weapon specific. That is a possibility. It's a risky hypothesis, right? It stretches a lot, but there certainly is, and it's a complex reverence. It's not just about the weapon. It's about, like you said, there's like a thing with usage, but that it's definite that if it's true, it's definitely emotional first. There's neurotransmitters, there's dopaminergic things involved. Like you said, there's oxytocin probably. So anyway, that's something that when liberal gun owners gets back in the black next year financially, because we took a hit this year,
Okay.
that would be the Curtis, I finished this paper. I want to pay you again. And I want you to look at this and go, Randy, this is crazy. You're out of your mind. Or, oh, maybe this, or this is bullshit. Or,
Well, look, I mean, for what you can do is you can put together a hypothesis, but what you're going to need is millions of dollars to do a scientific study, right?
yes.
I mean, when you start talking about fMRI and measuring hormone levels, but that's what people do, right? This is how scientists approach these topics. And I don't know if you can get the psychological world to get interested in it, maybe.
No, I just feel that there's a responsibility to be the first person to say, look, we've been kind of like on the side talking about this for years. A lot of people have a different version of it. I think weapons are in the blood, like that kind of a thing. And I agree. I think weapons are in the blood. I think it's not just culture. There's something else there, and there are some indications in the literature of what that could possibly be. And I'm just going to put that down. I'm going to write it down, and then I'm going to say, here, like, if you guys are interested in this, you could go off of this. I spent a lot of time, and then you don't have to do as much scraping for the initial stuff. I threw the large fish net out, the general net, and just pulled all the fish in the boat. Here's the fish. You can do whatever. I think at least I should do that. And that's what I'm doing. I should be done by the end of November, but
maybe, you're looking for the bullseye gene, right?
Yes. That's a good
gene that, when something hits the bullseye, it fires up a pleasure response.
Absolutely.
Look, it's not unreasonable. And one could definitely design a study. It would be very expensive.
Yes, and I know. I already thought about that. Like, I'm like writing this. I'm like, there's no fucking way. But I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So I just have one short question, and I'll hold you back from your lunch. One more. So at the end of the Leaky Foundation talk, you say you guys found some things to eat around Pinnacle Point, some vegetation, tubers, things like that, and you're sampling these things, you're cooking them up, and you're eating them. And one of the thingies ends up being slightly hallucinogenic. Okay, so what was that? What happened?
You know what? It's funny you bring it up because I don't remember the name of it, but the environment is filled with stuff like that, right? It's not unusual, and hunter-gatherers always seem to find it and figure it out. So the environment is filled with poisons. Hunter-gatherers always figure those out, and they put them on their points to help them kill animals and stuff like that, or throw them in the water to kill fish or whatever. And they also find the hallucinogens. One of the most famous ones is the one that the Yanomamo Indians in the Amazonia use when Napoleon Chagnon studied them. And I took classes with him when I was an undergraduate, and they put it in a tube, right? And they put it in the nose, and another guy actually blows it into your nose, and it sends you completely into an LSD-like thing. I can't remember what that was. It was at some friends of mine had a party, and the woman who was doing the cooking, she's really into all these natural South African plants, and she had it out there. And it's really tasty, and I just kept going for it. And they told me, Curtis, you probably want to lay back a little bit on that one. So yeah, I got a buzz off it. This is common, right? You got to be careful because you get into the wrong plant and it'll kill you. And I think probably there's overlap between the things that can kill you and make you high. So I don't remember what the name of that plant was. It was quite some time
ago. But you did mention that you ate that, and then that night you had an epiphany about human origins or something. What was that? What was that?
What? I don't remember what that was. And in fact, I noted that in a couple of talks, but those were like 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. And I'd have to go back and remember which one that was. But yeah.
But
I can't remember.
But did that epiphany end up in your work, or is this something separate?
I think it may have. I'd have to, because I also said that in a talk I gave about 10 years ago at the Tempe Arts Center, and people laughed like crazy. And I'm trying to remember what that was.
Was the insinuation that was one of the things that took us past some ceiling cognitively, that maybe it was coastal foraging and all these other things, but maybe it was this plant also in the mix too, that we were regularly eating and it went boom? And was that the insinuation?
Well, I don't know. I just don't remember.
Maybe.
I'm 63 now.
Right.
And some of the details of things, I just don't exactly remember where they came from. It's sometimes, look, I mean, people who study creativity know that there's this moment when you're kind of on the border of conscious and unconscious, that you actually can be very creative. And Thomas Edison actually knew this. There's a couple of stories where in his lab, he would have a comfortable chair, and he had these two, I think they were metal balls. And he would sit down with the two metal balls in his hands, and he would kind of start to doze off in the middle of work. And he knew those were the times where he had this kind of free association that would happen, right? Where data bits in his head would freely associate in a creative manner. And the reason he had the metal balls was to wake him up when he fell asleep.
Interesting.
Right? So when he fell asleep, the two metal balls dropped to the floor and went bang. And he woke up right then, and he'd remember that creative thought.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think still he's the guy with the most patents ever done. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is that humans' short-term memory storage is really important to human creativity. So humans have the ability, if I remember correctly, okay, this was literature I was reading long ago, have the ability to store something like 10 to 12 independent data bits at any one time. And the problem is they get compartmentalized, right? So if you can get them to kind of free associate, you can start to have creative thoughts. And, the one I often use is the guy who thought up Velcro. And I remember similarly reading a story. He had, a moment where he visualized a hook and a loop and them looping together, right? And that's how Velcro got invented. So if you can tap those moments of free association, you can come up with really creative solutions. And I think there are ways that you can stimulate that, and I remember having very creative thoughts when I was in those points, like waking up in the morning or going to sleep at night. And that was the point of that discussion, is that humans have this.
Yeah.
And if you can control it, then you can help push your creativity level up.
Yeah.
And lots of people have turned to hallucinogens for this. I don't know how productive that has been. There was I was reading this other thing about people microdosing, right?
Yeah.
To stimulate those creative thoughts. Yeah. I'm not advocating that at all. I'm just saying that, there are ways that it happened. And I do remember, I'd have to go back and reread my notes for that talk, because I do remember there was one thought that I had creative, or it could have been some imagery that I thought came from that event, but I don't remember exactly.
I'm going to remind you, because I totally want to hear about that. Do you know what I find is like ironic about all of this is that most people don't know this. Like if you look at where the caves are at Pinnacle Point, there's like a bougie golf course right there. Is that not correct? There's like so there's like this bougie golf course. So there's like bougie South Africans are like playing 18.
Right.
And right below it on this coast are like the first example of like projectiles, complex projectiles. There's hallucinogenic salads happening. There's all kinds of crazy, amazing stuff. And these dudes are just like right above it.
Well, I could tell you that the caves were found because of the golf course.
Yeah.
So that property belonged to the Mossel Bay municipality. and they were going to sell it to developers to develop that golf course and the residences. Right, there's houses all over there, and a heritage and environmental impact study had to be done, and a PhD student that I was helping at University of Cape Town was part of that study, that heritage assessment study, Peter Nilsson. And the other guy who was doing it was a guy named Jonathan Kaplan, who was an archaeologist. So they found the caves because that heritage assessment had to be done because of the golf course. Yeah. And that's how I ended up finding out about the caves with Peter. Peter and I went out there and started the project.
That's crazy, man.
We owe it to the golf.
I was thinking that, like, it might be some of the most important evidence ever found for humans, and these dudes are just like picking the sand wedge up like 300 meters away.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know if any other sites have ever been found. I mean, Heritage Impact Assessment finds lots of sites.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've ever found sites as famous as Pinnacle Point.